playing to the home team. I get so many people here that I already know, and they still came, Shelley. So I don't know what that means exactly. But I hope you learned something today. I promised Ryan and Terry I would keep it interactive and interesting. So let's just start with a joke. This is true. I think it was Tuesday was International Umbrella Day. So I was going to tell you an umbrella joke, but I'm afraid it would be over your head. Joke, folks. All right. Just really quick, I'd like to go around the room and just tell me who you are, who you're with, and what you want to get out of this today. So I'll know how much I'm really going to disappoint you. But you want to start, Ray?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Kyle Mueller. I'm with McLean County Government Human Resources, and I'm actually the recruiting and training specialist. But it's facility. So I would love to learn more about what our practices are.
Rachel Meisler, also with McLean County Government HR. We are, along with Kyle's position, looking at incorporating interview training for our departments. So looking to bring back some knowledge. My name is Taylor Williams. I am also I am a civil attorney, and I do some of the unemployments.
So you're an attorney, so
Just skip me.
my presentation. Thank you for coming.
Shelley Purchase, Business Services Representative for CareerLink. Sam is on our board, so I do quite a bit of work with Sam, and anytime I get to spend some time with Sam is great. But everything I do is workforce development, so I learn from others around me just as much as others learn me too.
Sales plug, because Shelley, if you have incumbent worker training or on-the-job training, apprenticeship programs you'd like to start with your company, there's funds available, and she knows where the purse strings are.
I'm Sam Brahms. I'm with Wolverine Associates. I'm our benefits specialist there. So even though I don't do a whole lot with recruiting, I do a lot with compliance. And so I'm always looking for compliance updates and or things that I just haven't heard of.
I'll try to stay compliant. How are you?
I'm Jessica Gregory. I'm the senior property manager for Tensac Apartments. I'm home based at Brookridge Heights Apartments, so I have a team that manages our 711 apartment community, and then I also help oversee Ironwood Gardens and Brickyard Apartments. So we've got about 1,400 apartments that we service, and I do a lot of the HR for all of it. And HR's, I feel like, is always evolving, and I think it's something you always have to stay on top of.
About that.
Hi guys, my name is Amber Strange. I manage and operate Nautical Bulls in Uptown Normal. We're a newer business, but we have multiple teams because we do
What is
offsite Nautical Bulls.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool, very cool. So we do offsite events, which requires multiple different teams, multiple different locations. And as we grow, I just want to make sure I'm staying on top of how I can best help my team and best service the business.
My name is Brian Buchanan. I'm Director of Safety, HR, IT, Accounting for Glorified Babysitter in a small company in Greeley.
And you do bathrooms, you clean bathrooms.
I clean bathrooms. I can also integrate your machines and robots if you need help with that.
And master of none.
Absolutely.
Jack of all trades. You already introduced yourself. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melanie Bautista. I am the Programs and Marketing Coordinator here at the Chamber. I'm the one who sees over all of these business educations. I'm interested in learning more about well, I don't really dabble much in that, more so in the marketing field. So yeah, it's exciting.
I'm Lori Stickling, Covenant Plumbing. My husband and I own and operate the business, and we've had lots of HR learning in the past 19 years.
What ruins it for me a little bit about the presentation, I would steal some of your stories but you're here and like, really feel like I can talk about this person and problems or whatever, but.
No, yeah, it's that there's lots of hard lessons learned to prevent any future ones.
Ryan Scritzo Enterprises. Excuse me. I'm just looking if Sam's got any tips for fully remote work. What that process for hiring and doing.
I'm Terry Valentini. My wife and I own Normal Gadgets here in town. And I'm just here to keep Sam straight and narrow on the 618, Southern Illinois.
618 rules. Tracy?
Tracy Severns, my husband and I own Coverings International, and I'm just here to learn some more about HR and things like that.
I'm Terry Weisenhunt. I am with AZ HR Hub. I am one of the recruiters there, and I've come because Sam is just an expert in his field. No, and I'm not really, he is an expert in his field, and I always look for an open opportunity to learn more.
Rogers, I'm the HR director for Unit 5. So I was a teacher and a principal and have just recently made the change. Was your child at Cedar?
Yeah.
I thought you,
Gregory.
yeah, I couldn't see your face.
Now.
So, I have a young team, everyone, there's 2 that just passed their 1-year mark at HR. And with me being new, just coming in, wanting to kind of just get a lot of new information, changes.
I'm Shelby Bruce. I'm in human resources for Heartland Bank, excuse me, as a talent acquisition specialist. I'm always just interested in hearing new tips and tricks having to do with recruiting, onboarding, new hires, anything like that. So I'm Brenda Schwarting. I work alongside with Shelby at Heartland Bank. I'm the talent acquisition manager there. Always looking for, what's changing, what's new. As mentioned, it's always evolving, and we just like to stay in the loop and in the know what's going on.
Karen, you snuck in on us. So.
I did, and I retired from.
I know.
I'm standing here racking my brain. I'm like, who are the people I know? I drew a complete blank, Karen. So you should have been the first person I thought of.
And I am treasurer for Promise Council, and we have had a couple remote workers, and one worked out great. The other one, it got a little complicated, but I had an interesting perspective with HR. I was made personnel assistant marketing officer trainee when I was 29 at our bank in Princeton. And it was a time where most of the staff was 30 years older than I was. And it was coming in new and having that, enforcing whatever the dress code and all that was very interesting as being the young.
There was a sea change, 30 years ago with the HR, and it was a shock to the older crowd, having to convert to, or having to recalibrate the norms of the workplace. And if you think now you think about the things that we were having to do in the workplace 30 years ago, maybe that you're like, I can't believe that was even tolerated at all. Like I remember one time we walked through the factory and just took down all the posters and pictures that were up everywhere. And it was like a porn storage thing, I was like, this was the workplace. You stuck in too as well.
Maureen Weiss, Executive Director at Homes of Hope, which we support adults with intellectual disabilities in 6 homes in Normal. We could do Bloomington as well, but all of them are in Normal right now. So just here to see any new
information. I don't know if I have much new stuff. I have stuff I've learned for years and years and years. So there is some new stuff, but technology always drives some things, right? But this is going to be our itinerary today. We're going to talk about finding candidates, where you find them. We're going to talk about vetting candidates through resumes and through the interviewing process. I'm going to talk a little bit about assessments and my thoughts on that. And we're going to talk about onboarding. Now, I would like to, as I promised Ryan, to keep this a little bit. This was working.
Good.
Of course you did.
Is it that off that or?
No, it's off of.
Oh, there it is. So here's what I would say about things to remember when you start to recruit. I always say hire the best you can afford. And that sounds simple, right? But I own a staffing agency. I work with clients all the time. you know, it is often a thing of like, can we get by as cheap as we can? And you get what you pay for. And I even read this one time from one of the startup companies out in Silicon Valley. They were talking about given the limited resources available for a startup, hiring talent is the best investment you can make. So I'm pretty staunch about that, if you're not willing to pay, it's like buying a piece of equipment. If you're not willing to buy the best, you know, you're going to get what you get. The other thing is there's an expense to hiring, making a poor hire. And the first expense is turnover generally, is that they don't make it for whatever reason. I've looked this up several times. What's the cost of a bad hire? I've seen anywhere from like 3 months of pay extra you have to pay to a year of pay that you end up paying to make up for the bad. Because you think about it, when you go out, and you folks that are already doing it, you know what I'm talking about. When you get ready to hire somebody, you start spending money. Before you ever interview the first person, you got some kind of ad or some kind of something going out. Somebody's got some time invested in making a phone call, right? So there's money there, and then you bring them in, and what do? You train them. So somebody trains them, and the trainer, you paying the trainee. So there's a lot of money that gets invested, and if the new hire doesn't stick around, then that's all a waste. So sometimes you got to think of it in that way. My other thing is don't start with the unemployed. I think most ads and stuff that I read and see are out there they're looking for somebody that's looking for a job that doesn't have a job. And I'm going to show you in a minute why that's a big problem. But I say look for the passive candidates. That's where you're going to find the talent that you're looking for. And a passive candidate, who's that? That's somebody that basically doesn't even know they want your job yet. They may not even be unsatisfied with their job. And this is where recruiters earn their money, in my belief, is that this is where the hard work, the rubber meets the road. And finally, we're going to go into this a lot more later, but you have to put the clamps on them, so to speak. And I'll explain what clamps means, and you might look at your paper and think, well, that would be a good place to pay attention. So here's our worst nightmare right now. I just got this off of, I think it was the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is the unemployment numbers over the last few years. You can see 2008 when we went into the recession, and then you can see COVID at the beginning of 2020. And why, you know, because this is extremely low unemployment rate right here, both those. But look at before 2008, and this is what my real point is about this chart. And I had a slideshow. I was trying to show people before in the 2008 era that our workforce in the United States is shrinking. And if you look at just the head count of people graduating high school and the schools, those numbers, those people that end up in military jobs, colleges, and so on, that number is shrinking. And the baby boomers are dying off, retiring and dying off. And sooner or later, and it may have happened last year, I don't know yet, I don't know the figures out, but sooner or later, the birth rate and the death rate are going to cross. Always in the history of this country, our birth rate has been higher than our death rate. But that's changing, and that changed 20-something years ago. So guess what today is? So this is part of our challenge overall in the United States and other countries. Here's our other part of the challenge. In Illinois, people leaving Illinois, and some of it has to do with the baby boomers retiring and moving to warmer climates. Some of it has to do with if you look at the farms today, they take way less people to farm the acreage we have around here than they used to. Even since I've moved up here, there's small tractors are more sophisticated. It's less labor intensive, and some of it people hate Pritzker. I've heard that before too. Maybe you have too. So in our area, though, here's our added problem in our area. This is the current unemployment rate for the Bloomington normal rate, 3.7%. when I was a young man in HR, anything that was below, we always said anything below 5% really was full employment. And if you got below 5% and you were hiring those people, you were hiring the unemployable. In other words, they came with some kind of baggage that just, you know, or they smoked a lot of weed in one of your, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a problem, 3.7%. So that's your challenge when you're going out recruiting. Are you going to try to recruit from one of the 3.7%? The answer's no, right? This is another interesting thing. This is a little bit older than I probably should update this slide, but this is two things. It shows how job seekers research jobs, and it shows the generation that uses the tools the most, right? So on the left, you have applicants through a survey said that they'd researched the job on a mobile phone. Come on in. They researched the job on a mobile phone. You can see it up here and see it here. So they've researched the job on a mobile phone, and I can tell you, like 6, 7 years ago, we were tracking this stuff in the office, and it suddenly went from, we could tell, right, Terry, you can tell if they're searching it through a desktop or mobile phone, and within a month time, it totally flip-flopped. Our candidates went as just almost immediately to mobile phones. And so they were applying for our job on mobile phone. And on the right, obviously the millennials and the Gen Xers are more adroit at that. And so we would expect to see more of them using their phone all the time. Go back to the left 1 second. Daniel Pink wrote a wonderful book called To Sell Is Human. And if you're in sales, I always recommend this book. But in it, he talks about how it used to be buyer beware, because the buyer buyer goes on a car lot, right, and doesn't know much about the car, the salesman does. But now the buyer has all these access to tools and research and everything, and that buyer walking on the car lot might actually know more about the car than the seller. So that's true with our businesses too. And I'm gonna bring up a term here in a minute that I just don't think everybody quite gets, but this is how people are looking at our companies now. And they are looking at everybody in here, they're looking at your company. So back in 2019, I did this chart, and these were the search platforms, the major search platforms, and this was about it. And this is not that long ago. So it's Career Builder, Monster, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Craigslist. And they, like Career Builder worked okay in this area, but Monster, because I don't know if you remember, but they had that deal with Panagraph back then. So Monster was kind of a hotter platform here than that. So I just the other day asked ChatGPT to name the top 12 search platform. This is the new list. This was just last week I made this list. So this is in order of the use of the top search platforms. This is what people are going on to. I don't even know what some of these are. I don't know, maybe somebody in this room does. I know some towards the bottom tend to be industry specific. So that might be it. But these are what people are going to find jobs, post their resumes. We use Indeed a lot. We use LinkedIn a lot. Don't use ZipRecruiter. Career Builder doesn't work so well in this area. The other ones I haven't used, so I can't really make. ZipRecruiter was expensive and it didn't work as well as I had wanted it to. So these are just some observations I make from using these platforms. But that just shows you, and this is just the top 12. This is not an all-inclusive list. Because the farther down you can see it got really, really granular to the industry that people were searching for. So, placing an ad. I think I read the first newspaper ad was placed in the 1700s, 1600s. And up until like in the last 30 years, that was still how people found jobs. you know, and the want ads in the paper, and you'd think something had changed in that amount of time, but really not much had until the last, I'd say even 15 years. Because when we opened our office 15 years ago, we were still pounding ads in the pantograph, and everybody was, right? So this is a line you might want to pay attention to. You're recruiting every day online, whether you know it or not, right? So I say ABR, always be recruiting. Always be recruiting. I worked with a company that we were struggling to put people there. And one of the reasons we were struggling to put people, their pay was okay, you know, and I think they were a good company, really do. But they had an online thumbprint that looked terrible. They would, you know, people were going on, anybody they fired would go on and just say whatever they wanted about them. Nobody would come back and respond. Their website looked kind of outdated and hokey. But people, you know, and I would call candidates, hey, you know, I got this job opening at XYZ. And they say, yeah, I looked them up online. I'm not working there. And no matter what I would say, you know, it wouldn't convince them. So I would say you're always be recruiting. And that means your presence you show the community whether you have a job opening or not, right? And sometimes that is a tough sell in a board of directors meeting or an executive C-suite folks. They don't quite understand. I always have to have this good presence out there. So people say, I want to go work at Heartland Bank. You know, I want to go work for the city. Don't place job descriptions in the ad. I hate this. I'm telling you, you can look it up today. Look at any ad on Indeed. Maybe more than half of them are just job descriptions. And let's all agree that job descriptions suck, right? They all suck. You got to have them, but they suck. And so to place a job description out there is really not going to be, you know. So I always say you start with a WIFM. So what's WIFM mean? Anybody know what WIFM means? What's WIFM mean?
For me.
What's in it for me? So what's in it for the candidate? And you know, when you place a job out there, first job description, first thing it starts listing all the things you're going to do for my company, right? I don't care about you. I just want you to know, here's all the things I'm going to do, you're going to do for my company. So I recently, I won't say, but you know, if I did, most of the people in this room know, I'm doing on an executive recruit right now. I worked for a couple, 3 days on this job and I put out there, and it was dynamite. And it got a great response. And how I started it with the idea that I would need to address the candidate's desires, need, want, right? I wanted to say what was in it for them if they got interested in my job. And so I've been doing interviews the last few weeks on this position. And one of the first things people are saying to me, I say, you know what, but you know, the thing about this is a special place, and I would, you know, be a chance for me of a lifetime, and just all the little things I put at the very beginning. Yeah, I got down to sooner or later, you got to tell them what they're going to do, right? So I got down to that, but at the beginning, I wanted them to, here's what I think this would be good for you, right? As I said, it used to be buyer beware, now it's seller beware. So when we're placing ads out there, before they've ever responded to that, they've already researched us. They already know a hell of a lot about us, right? The other thing is, again, going back to these search platforms, what pond are you fishing in? So if you are fishing for that, you know, you put an ad out there and it's basically for the unemployed, you're going to get unemployed applicants. That the person you really want? Well, probably not, but maybe. But so you always got to be thinking when you're trying to do this recruit and you're trying to put ads out there or get resumes. It's like, what pond do I actually want to fish in, and what bait do I want to use? Because I'll go back to the job description thing. If you're putting the job description out there, you're trying to get the fish to eat the food you like. Well, how you catch fish is you give them the food they like, right? I love this one. I don't know if you've seen this, but one of my favorite books on HR from you HR people is Work Rules by Laszlo Bock. He was the people guy at Google. And this was an ad. They ran this in LA, and this is, and if you're driving down the LA street and you see that, and you're smart enough to know what goes between those brackets, you know they're asking you to apply for this job. If you can do this calculation. So they got a wonderful response, and the best thing about it, they didn't get responses from anybody that couldn't do it. Right? So all they got was people they knew that could figure this calculation out. And so I love that. And so I kind of think, like, when I'm placing ads out there, how can I do something similar to this? Something, not necessarily putting a calculation or algorithm out there, you can figure it out, but something along that lines. Who would see this of the person I'm interested in and figure out what I'm really after, right? Okay, so anybody have any questions so far? Not the job ads or anything. So you've done that, and all of a sudden you've done it perfectly, and you get stacks and stacks of resumes. I read, in the last 2 weeks, I've read 70 resumes. But I go through resumes pretty quick, and I'll tell you how to do it here in a minute. But I've read 70 resumes in the last 2 weeks. So you got a resume, maybe you place some ads, as I said. Maybe you've done what real hardcore recruiters sometimes often do. Shouldn't say sometimes. Maybe you did the Sherlock Holmes work, the gumshoe stuff, and you used the phone and you source some candidates, right? And we've all, probably almost everybody in this room has got that call, from a recruiter. Hey, I don't know if you know somebody that might, and they're actually talking to you. I don't know if you know somebody that does a job like yours that might be interested in this position I've got. And if they're not, do you have a name you could give me? That works. The phone still works. And I think it still works because and this is the thing that I keep preaching in my office, phone still works. It may work better today than it used to work because people don't use the phone as much. They text, they email. And the beauty of the phone, and from a sales side and from a recruiting side, the beauty of the phone is that you get tons more information from a phone call. If you send an email out, you get a response and they answer your question, but they don't expand or, add any more information than, none of us do, right? We just answer the question in the email. A phone call, though, if you're a good recruiter, one question and answer leads you to the next question and answer, and the next question and answer, and the next question and answer, right? And that's just, to me, invaluable. So the phone still works. And this is still a good thing. Maybe you got.
Question. When you talk about the phone still works, what if the person on the other end, a phone person, so you try and reach out, and you might get them once, but usually I will end up asking them, what is the best way to communicate? But we're finding in today's society that people don't want to talk to us. I mean, even after they're hired, they want to be doing texting. And plus it gives us, in certain situations, that text provides proof. Yeah. I agree. I'd rather I'm old school, so I'd rather have a conversation because they get more information.
100%. And we use texting a lot in the office. We have a great system called Sense. So we can, right out of our CRM system, we can text. And we can text in groups, and we can text, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with texting. And to your point, there are some people that are just not comfortable on the phone. But I can tell you that a phone call, you get And I think sometimes it's the person making the call, trying to make the other person on the other end of the phone feel comfortable, and that's what recruiters do, good ones. You know, they can get into the conversation easily without threatening, that's something. I know, Terry, you find this shocking, but I had to learn to do originally when we first up in the office as a salesperson. I just wanted to word vomit. And you can't say guys like, and really in Daniel Pink's book, he talks about the best salesperson being not the extrovert, not the introvert, but the ambivert. Somebody that knows how, can ask a question and then shut up. So I'm going to get a little more in depth in that when we get to interviews, because it always amazes me what people will tell you on the phone. This is a good way to word of mouth. Friend of a friend, we know that there's something like, I saw a statistic one time that 80% of people that find their next job find it through somebody they already know. And so this is not a bad way of doing it, but sometimes as a recruiter, we don't have the luxury of friend of a friend, right? And of course, there's always my brother-in-law who just got out of jail candidate, so. So hopefully you have a stack of resumes. So now what do? Well, if you got a big stack like I've had these last few weeks, you got to get to it quickly. And the first thing I do is make a checklist of wants. And I've been doing this a long, long time. I still write it down. I still write down, and I'm not saying 20 things. I'm saying here are the things that I am not looking at this resume. If I get down through it and this is not in here, that resume is done. Because I got to get through these resumes quickly, right? So I'm not parsing it out every word for word, line for line. But there are some things that they're deal killers. It's 3, 4, 5 things that are deal killers if they're not in this resume. And because otherwise you could get a huge time suck with tons of resumes. If you're fortunate enough to get tons of resumes, all right. If you get one, you got all day, right? And hopefully you've done better than that. I make a checklist of wants. This is the thing I preach to candidates all the time, and it's a big thing for me. You're looking for the show, but you're not going to fall for the tell. Anthony Chekhov, a famous playwright, one of the great Russian writers, said that, don't tell me about the broken mirror. Show me how the moonlight glinted off the glass on the floor. And so that's what I tell candidates. I just went to this office holding up some resumes yesterday. I said, look at, now I hope I don't offend anybody in your resume in this room today, but at the top of the resume where they have that paragraph, if I did this and you can trust me and I'm honest and I'm hardworking, and everybody has that shit on the top of their resume, everybody. And it doesn't mean anything to me. And it's not, there's some recruiters in this room, right? Who's a recruiter in this room? So what, do you read that? The paragraph? No, you don't read it. You skip right over it. So in newspaper, what do they call that? No. But in the world of newspaper, what's the most important part of the newspaper? Is this old school?
Header.
Above the fold, they called it. So the fold on newspaper, so the top half is above the fold. That's the most important headlines there are. So we got this stuff above the fold, and they putting in bullshit in above the fold, right? So I skip right over it. I'm looking for them to show me, if you say, I'm trustworthy, I'm honest. Okay, all right. But if you tell me I'm trustworthy or not, but if you show me, okay, I was the night manager at the Quick Stop, and I had a key to the safe deposit box that I had to drop off. Now you're showing me stuff, right? So I'm looking on the resume. You can tell me you're, hardworking executive and done this and that. Until you show me down in the guts of the resume, it's nothing to me. So I always look for the show, not the tell. Early in my career reading these resumes, I'd go, if you tell me that's what it is, I believe you. And then I start realizing, well, there's nothing in the rest of those resumes shows me that you can weld, you know, and I'm applying for a welding job. Another biggie with me, you guys that know me well have heard me say this. Now I may be talking more to candidates here, but as a recruiter, this is business. There's not a single person in this room here today that's here because of my good looks, right? We're all in business. I know, it's a man crush, I get it. I have no problem with that. But we're not, but everybody here is, even if it's a nonprofit, no margin, no mission, right? So everybody here's, we're talking business, the language of business is money, and the language of money is numbers. So when I'm looking at resume, you know, although I had some great candidates that didn't know how to write a resume, but that's one of the first things I start looking for is numbers in resume. And numbers also are a show, don't tell thing. So if you tell me you're a manager, okay, you know, but if you show me that you managed on there and you managed 100 people, now you got my attention. Or if you told me you managed a store with 10 people, that's versus when you managed a store of 100 people. Now I'm starting to see, now you're starting to show me the scale, right? Now I see what the difference is, you know, and that's also something when we get to interviews, you're trying to parse out of people like, you know, just tell me about it, you know, they're managing and what was the scope. Numbers are, if I managed a factory that was 2 acres under roof, that's, you know, fairly, if I was managing a factory that had 50 acres under roof, it's a different story. It's a different job, even though the job titles are the same, right? So they're different. So numbers are a big thing with me. I always, I don't care if it's, you know, clerk at the quick shop. I don't care if it's C-suite. I don't care if it's welder. I'm looking for some kind of achiever pattern in their resume. They started out here, they moved to here, more responsibility, more authority, more complicated job, more people. When I start seeing resumes where they've been up and down, I start getting the Jeff Arberg would say my spotty sense would start going off. So I look for achiever pattern. I look for gaps. In the staffing world, commercial staffing world, you can see resumes where they have an 8-year gap, you know, and because they got 8 to 10 sentence, and so they got their 8 years in. So there's that kind of gap. There's other kinds of gaps, so that and you know, if I get to an interview with them, I want them to explain the gap, and I tell candidates gaps by themselves aren't bad if you have a story for it. And you know, my mother fell ill. I hear this often. My mother fell ill with cancer. I took 5 years off. We got through it. I had 2 children. I decided to stay home till they got later in school. Now I'm ready to enter workforce. So there's gaps by themselves aren't, I don't throw a resume out necessarily for a gap, right? Job hopping, a little different story. I do have still old school enough that I know for some of you old folks say it's kind of a thing, and it is, and I see it on resumes, and particularly IT type of people, because you know, in IT, when you're looking at IT, I think they're proud of that kind of that job hopping thing. I don't know what it is. I'm not an IT guy, so, but I know it's a thing. So job hopping, now I will say, some resumes look like job hopping, and here's the first thing I do in an interview. Let's walk through your resume. Tell me about why you were at this job and why you left this job to go to the next job. And why did you leave that job to go to the next job? And why did you leave that job? I mean, I just grind it through it. It's not pretty, not fancy, but all kind of things come out of those questions. And, but sometimes, you know, it looks like a job hopping resume and they, you know, the business closed down. You know, I had a chance and advanced, you know, and I became a VP. And then that business sold off. And so I moved, you know, so there's legitimate reasons for job hopping. Yes.
What do you like to see for, like the number of years for work history listed on resumes?
For what? Job? It depends. Here's why, to me, it depends. And here's why I struggle with, let's go back to job ads, right? And job description. I used to piss my old boss off for 100 reasons, but he would say, well, I want 10 years experience. I said, what if I find like the A student from Harvard University and they've got 2 years experience? Are you going to say no? And that's what I found about really high quality candidates. You know, we'll put the years, and I don't know if I'm answering your question exactly, but I'm going to try here. But if we put the years of experience required out there and we're not careful with that, we can eliminate all kinds of people that are really, you know, smart. You know, maybe if you're an idiot, 10 years is, you need that 10 years of experience. But maybe if you're really sharp and can bring an impact on the business, 2 years, that's all I need. I'm gonna hit the road running.
I guess I'm thinking more on the opposite end of that spectrum with people that will list every job that they've had since high school.
Oh, okay, all right, that's a different.
And I just
okay,
like, can we go by the rule of thumb that if it's relevant to the job position that you're applying for, go ahead and list it, but otherwise, no?
I think that's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm gonna put it as a line on here. I have pretty strong feelings about that too. If you go back 10 or 15 years, you know, if you've got, I worked at Dairy Queen, I worked at Petco, then I got, you know, I don't care about, I want to know in the last 10 or 15 years, we'll get a little more into that. What have you done, you know, that's relevant to this position I've got, you know, and if in the last 10 or 15 years, you haven't done anything, and I have to go back that far to find something, then yeah, it's a problem. Yeah, Terry.
So are you saying, in a sense, if probably two ways, you know, if your niche is being an accountant and your resume is an accountant resume, that's one thing. Or if you're trying to get into something else, tailor your resume for that field. So you have a resume that you will.
I think that's a little different than the question she's asking, but I do tell candidates that if they've got, you know, a skill set where they've done, as we were talking back here earlier, like payroll and accounting and HR, you know, like they can skew or, you know, move their payroll or skew their resume more towards accounting if that's what they're after versus payroll. But I think what she's really referring to is a thing for me is like, I got a resume from a guy's PhD, really smart guy. And this last week, 32 pages.
Gosh.
32 pages. I printed it out. I'm like, I'm gonna show everybody who walks in this office this resume. 32 pages. Now it was a CV, more of a CV than a resume, but it was still 32 pages. He took me back to selling newspapers on his block when he was. I don't care about that. If you haven't done something in the last 10 or 15 years for this executive position, in this executive position I'm trying to fill, I don't care.
So with the job.
Does that answer?
With the job hopping, you know, so I've seen resumes that, you know, the job hopping, but you know, it's like 6 months here and 6 months there. You know, I mean, and you said sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't matter, but you know, you're going to pour resources into hiring these people. And if they're job hopping every 6 months or a year, do you really want to consider this person?
I guess it depends. Again, why are they job hopping? If it's more money, and then we'll get into the clamps here in a minute, but if it's more money, then that means you're going to have to come up with more money in 6 months. Right?
And can you recoup that?
And can you
if they leave?
That's right. Education thing, I'm you know, obviously, if I've got my job is splitting atoms, I probably want them to have a degree in physics. They're gonna split atoms in my, you know, I mean, I don't mean to be facetious about that, but education means certain, but how many people end up in the discipline that they graduate college in? There's a statistical figure. It's like 60, 70% don't. They end up in some other field. So what education means to me generally is, and we can, you know, in this day and age, there's a lot of argument about academics and education and college degrees and are they worth it? But to me, it's always been, if I can see they went through school and managed to get their shit together enough to get a degree, that's means something. That's credit for me in my book. And I throw this in because when you get those skinny resumes, like people just graduating college or high school, or they haven't done a lot. And I kind of discovered this doing mock interviews out at Youth Build. You know, you'd be talking to them, they, I really haven't done anything. And as the more you talk to them and the more you do, and they go, well, I did volunteer at the nursing home for 3 years and I helped, but you know, and they start to tell you this stuff, you're going, and now they're showing me that somebody trusted them, that they were a hard worker, that they showed up, that, you know, clean bedpans and nursing them, you know, so that sometimes some of that, you know, I don't skip over the volunteer experience thing at the end. I always kind of look at who are they volunteering for? Are they, what was yours, your group?
Homes of Hope.
Homes of Hope, you know, are they you know, that tells me something about maybe what's important to them. Because everything that we're doing here, everything we're doing is this thing about motivation. Why is this person sitting across the desk from me? All this resumes and all this interviewing, everything, why are you sitting here? That's what we want to know. And maybe they don't know. But this is part of it. And so the volunteering thing is a kind of a thing with me. Like that. All right. So here's some bad news. Unstructured interviews provide only 14% of the information you need. I believe it. Just slightly better than reference checks. I do have a problem with that one because I think reference checks is in reference checks, you find nothing until you find something. You know, and I'll speak on that. But unstructured interviews, I have a unique experience of having an office, and the next to my office, my current office, there's a little conference room, and I've had clients come in and they didn't want to interview the candidate on site because maybe they were firing somebody in the building, so they come to my office and interview, and I could hear them in their interviewing. And they would come out and they would think, I did a wonderful interview and I hired this person. I'm sitting there, I heard the whole interview. I have no idea what they know about him. You know, maybe they were Cubs fan and he was a Cub fan. So that was it. I'm hiring them. And they just terrible interviews. And typically because they're unstructured, and I'm going to get into that a little more here in a minute. Work sample tests, I'm a big fan of. Sometimes it's difficult to come up with a sample of the work that you are asking. You know, if you're CEO, how do I come up with a sample to give them a sample test of work? But if you're a welder, you certainly can. If you, like in our office, and we did this with, we gave evaluations of Excel, bookkeeping, other things. You know, everybody walks in your office and is an Excel expert. I don't know if you know that.
Before we started using PrideStaff, I made a Word, Excel, and PDF, and then also a small test program in our software.
I did the same thing at Chatsworth. We didn't have that, so I was hiring these quality people, and I wanted to know if they could solve a word problem. Quality people, what we were using on the paint line, it had to be so many gallons and so many feet per minute, stuff like. I just wanted to know if they could solve that, and because we were having terrible turnover, like Brian was talking about, and so we came up with this real simple or sample tests, and all of a sudden we started eliminating all kinds of people, and the people that passed it were the people that stayed. Sort of like the Google thing, billboard we saw a minute ago. So I like work sample tests. I've got a client they do a lot of welding, so nobody goes onto his shop floor that hasn't passed the welding test. General cognitive ability, I don't have much of this, but I do give the test. I'll talk about some of those in a minute, but I do think they do and show you some things without getting too complicated of a test. The structured interview, I'm going to dive big time into that, but I'm a big fan of that and knowing what you're going to do before you get into the interview. Let's talk about that right now. So I hope I got enough here. So I'm just going to give you some examples of questions that behavior-based kind of questions. So this is just kind of a list I'll go through before an interview and kind of figure out the job. Did everybody get one here? Kind of particular job that I'm saying,
Okay.
and I hear this all the time in the office next to me is like, they would ask yes and no questions, binary questions. And you don't go back to the phone thing, binary questions like a text. Open-ended questions like a phone call to me. And so that's why I'm a big fan of that. But I always use some kind of performance behavior-based questions. This is just a sample list. But so structured interview, and the thing I always say is just ask better questions. And know what you're going to ask before you get in there. And I use a scorecard for the answers. Right? So I've even used ChatGPT to say, hey, I'm interviewing this candidate. What might be the 3 or 4 open-ended questions I would ask this candidate? Yeah, I don't know how many in the rooms use ChatGPT. Everybody, right? I got addicted to it. It beats the blank page syndrome, hands down, right? Anyway, so have the say, like if you've got 5 interviews, make sure you have your questions. The same questions you ask all 5 candidates. That's the other thing I heard in the conference room. 3 people would come up and he'd ask all 3 of them 3 different sets of questions. I don't even know how you compare when you do it like that, right? How can you do that? So I'm gonna role play with Terry a little bit. Here's one of my favorite questions to ask in an interview. I say, Terry, tell me about a time when all your skill sets and knowledge and experience came to bear on a particular issue or problem, and you're proud enough to tell me, Sam, I knocked it out of the park on this.
It's never happened.
Ryan,
Ryan's got one.
Ryan, tell me about a time. I know both of you. I know both of you got some good ones. What are you proud of? What do you want to brag about? And it could, another thing I sometimes add, I said, it could be a good ending or a bad ending, but
I
bought to an
I
end.
bought a business last spring and it failed by fall.
So what skill set did you use to make that happen there?
Or
lack of-
lack of skill sets. I learned.
Why are you proud of it?
So I bought a couple businesses. So when I've done that, I always assume that those businesses operate like mine do. When I bought this one, I missed a massive piece of due diligence in terms of inbound lead flow. This particular business went out through the planning houses, whereas all my normal business operations is direct. They contact us. There's a time delay when you go through the planning houses for big construction projects. So here I bought a business, the old owner cleared off all that work. And then I buy it and get it and go, okay, where's my inbound? And it wasn't existing because he stopped doing planning houses 1.5 years earlier. That's something that I learned that I have to pay attention to now. So that's where.
So what skill set did you use What was your strength that you used in there that,
To make the mistake?
no, to bring it to resolution?
Oh, just troubleshooting of if I'm gonna lose money, I want to make sure I learned a lesson that is of cursory value to the amount of money that I lost. So if you're ever gonna make a mistake, make sure you learn something.
So what did we learn about this candidate?
Steve?
We're gonna take risks.
Steve,
He's analytical.
analytical,
Huh?
well, he's willing to take a risk, right?
Like, if you're really religious, you're also really, really.
That's right.
So it's specified.
Sometimes he's an idiot.
A lot of the time I'm an idiot.
Well, you know, ignorance can be cured. Stupidity is forever, but.
He wants to own everything in the world.
Takes responsibility for his mistake.
Take responsibility for, I mean, we learned a lot out of that one little question, you know, if you ask all, now the next 5 people that come in, if we ask them all that question, we're going to get, you know, we try to get this thing to be 3D, not 2D. Right? We try to get a full depth of what this candidate is, right? So, let me see. That is kind of like my go-to question almost all the time. Some of these things it depends like, I like, you know, like, for example, if you're like, I'm hiring somebody and this is a sensitive business and this is a sensitive thing they're going to be dealing with. Give me a time of example when you had to conform to a policy that you did not agree with. You know, that, you see how I'm saying that it's a little different question than that question. Like, I may be asking you to do some tough things here, and so tell me about, if they give you something that's really lightweight and like, yeah, we just, all hell broke loose when I had to, it's probably not going to be a candidate for you. Anybody have any questions on these? Yeah, Shelley.
What about someone that responds with, you know, I don't have an answer for that right now. Can I email you an answer later?
I struggle with those a little bit because I'm not trying to catch people flat-footed, but I am trying to catch them with their guard down. And I feel like I get better answers when you can't come up, you're not proud of anything. You can't come up with something you're proud of right now. All right, email it to me. It won't matter, but but you'll feel good. I'll feel good, I guess. You know what I'm saying? So so when I do this, then I do this. Here's the other thing I do. I have a scorecard. I'm interviewed lately. Making trouble. I'm hiring for a lead supervisor for the funny company, the 618ers here, funny company. Thank you. So I want to know about, management, how they rate management wise, leadership wise. They're going to be running a shop floor with machines, right, Shelley? SAP experience, for those of you who don't know, it's a logistics experiment. Brian, I want to know their problem solving skills. So those are all core competency things in my book. Like, and we're going to talk a bit more about how I pull these 2 out here in a minute. Then I want to know about situational fit. And what I mean about situational fit, right? I mean, just look at Sir EQ. Everybody know what EQ is? Emotional quotient, Daniel Goleman stuff. That is the single highest predictor of success in a job. Did you know that? How high emotional quotient is, not necessarily technical, but emotional, like how they get along with others, how they show empathy, how do they make friends, How do they communicate? The philosophical mission. I'm running a what was your,
Homes of Hope.
Homes of Hope, sorry. Running Homes of Hope. When you're doing, interviewing for nonprofits, what's one of the biggest things you're looking for? The mission. Are they passionate about the mission? So that's, so in this case, I just kind of do this for example, it's a philosophical thing, are they a philosophical fit with my company? My company's type A. This guy's smoking weed in the parking lot, probably not going to be a good fit. In this case, I just put DISC assessment down. Are you all familiar with DISC? Right? It's not very complicated, and I don't know how laser focused it is, but I always liked it kind of, get my arms around who's in the office and how they're communicating.
Do you do that before you interview?
I've done it before and after. Generally, if I'm doing this, it's like, I'm going to make them a job offer. The chamber does it.
Yes,
right?
we had.
Gary came in and did it right.
What's that the acronym for?
It's dominance, influence, cautious or steady. So all of us in this room are dominantly one of those four things. And because of that, we communicate differently. If I'm a D and you're a C, we communicate differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be communicated to differently, right? So dominant is generally like, fire chief, plant manager. I is like, I'm an I, sales, white belt, white shoes sales guy. C are cautious. They're a lot of people with C's are in nonprofits. They help people, clergy people. S, or got that backwards. S is the steady, and I got it backwards. S is the clergy people, the nonprofit. C is the cautious or accountants, bookkeepers, and with the C's, every I's got to be dotted, every T's crossed. With the I's, we don't care as long as it's a damn good story. And you know what pisses off a C more than anything? An I. Yeah.
How do you feel about the color palette?
I just am the simple guy, what's the other one? The Enneagram?
Enneagrams.
Enneagram, you got 16 things and you got a wingman and I just wanted something I can quickly tell a group like this, but you're a C and you're going to get along pretty good with I's or D's and S's, but not so much with I's, So, but when I walk into a C's office, and I had to learn this, as a young guy in a factory, is like walking into the controller's office, smoking and joking, and taking up time, and like that does not fly with the C's. Let's get every number in the column and the right columns and all that. All right. So I had to learn how to approach. I had to learn to change my. So I only put that on here for demonstration's sake. When you do your next interview, you will have different columns, right? You're going to be looking for different things. All I'm saying is that when you do interviews, part of the structured interviews is having these structured questions. So you're going to ask every candidate, and you're also going to write something that. How many of us have been house hunting? You look at 15 houses in a day, and when you get home, which house had the seat-thrown bathroom? I think it was, no. You know what I'm talking about, right? So it's the same way with candidates. I guarantee you, even 5 candidates, four candidates, you can, at the end of the day, you can be totally, that one, the one that was, you can look at the resume, but so many things are going to come out. It's not on that resume. You really can't go back to the resume, So I just know that when you sit down, I physically do this. I've been doing some form of this almost 40 years. I still physically do this. So That is the structured interview. So what we really want to know, in a way, out of all this, what have you done in the past that will guarantee me that you will be successful in my job a year from now? That's the bottom line. All the other questions and all the other things we're doing is just to get into that question. That's, I always say there's just really one question in an interview, and that's it. Now, how you get that answer, you might have to ask a lot of other questions, right? So this goes back to, somebody mentioned this a minute ago. So I said this, what's your most significant achievement? I kind of asked Ryan that. That was a significant achievement thing. And sometimes you can parse it out as you go through the interview. When you said, the person starts telling you, I got this grant funding and we finally got the big building and we finally got a hole in the ground and brought, then you start learning a lot more about the candidate. And then the other thing to me is, if I can get to it, and sometimes they're both the same. And Ryan's answer was a pretty good example of both. Yeah, it was a failure, but it was an achievement. And what else did we learn about Ryan? Well, he's got a problem solving culture. Lori said he's analytical. He had a problem. Things weren't going well. He found himself in a hole. What's the first rule when you find yourself in a hole, Ryan?
Stop digging.
Stop digging. So he stopped digging. He started doing analyzing. And so we saw Ryan's got a pretty good problem solving culture. So how do you get to him is, in both cases, is the, it's like newspaper reporter. How, who, what, when, where, why, and give me some measurements. Again, I'm going back to this business thing of like, we're in business. The language of business is numbers. So why aren't we using numbers? So here's the traits that matter most when I'm reading between the lines. The first thing we know, the first thing that has to happen is day one technical things. For you to step foot in my office, you say, when you're looking, fill this job, say, what is the very minimum things that they need to have to walk in this office and start working tomorrow? This plant, this factory, this showroom, this. So what is the very minimum things? Well, if I'm welding, what do they gotta have to be? A welder, they gotta, that's day one. If I'm sorting through this and I don't see welding, they gotta be a welder or a solderer, or if they're bookkeeping, they gotta have, day one, they gotta have Quicken or QuickBooks. Yeah. So it's technical needs, but so technical needs are, like I said, good at soldering, Excel expert, master at SAP, the logistics system, lean back, black belt if they're into quality. And year one needs, these are probably the more important ones. And why I call them the eulogy traits? It's what they're going to say at your funeral that matters, right? And they're not going to say, Brian was a great welder. They're not going to say, Shelley, she could run Excel like nobody's business. Yeah, at least you hope they don't do that at your funeral, because that is, right? But here's the thing about eulogy traits, and just let's put some words on it. They were kind. They were generous. Very empathetic. They were a mentor. They were humorous. They were a friend, right? So we know that 80% of all employees who lose their job in the first year do so because of the fit and behavior issues. And that's these eulogy issues. That's the EQ stuff. So as you're going through the, and again, hearing over the wall, these interviews, they would often get onto technical things, and they would never ask some of these other things to get the fit. And then, you small businesses, small offices, this is even more intense. You get the wrong fit in a small office, how bad that could be. So these are the things that I think get overlooked a lot of times, but I think we see over and over and over. in the statistics of why people didn't make it the first year is because of these eulogy trait things that they failed in. Assessments, I'm, again, go back to Google rules or the work rules by Laszlo Bock, the book. And Google does, I think, 5 different assessments for everybody that applies at Google. I'm not suggesting you do 5 assessments, but I'm saying assessments are good. And I think you should be, very conscious of what assessments you're picking and why. Also is interesting, Google found that some people just suck at interviewing. And so the department managers would get to interview their own people. Well, Google tracked their success rate of keeping these people that they had interviewed and hired, and each manager gets a score on their interviewing prowess, right? So if their number falls below a certain amount, they get fired from the interview process and somebody else interviews their department. So assessments and reference checks. We're going to talk about that. Like I said, the phone is still good. Reference checks, let's go back. Now let's jump right to assessment. So I hear some that I've done and used over the years. Certainly Myers-Briggs, everybody's familiar with that. It gives you a personality kind of makeup of someone. The trick with that is in any of these is, do you know what you want in that position? You can do it and find somebody's whatever the Myers-Briggs GHP, whatever. And you're like, I got this. Now, is this the person I want in here? DISC is that's why I kind of like DISC. It's a little, to me, it's easier for me to say that I've got look, I got 3 Ds in this office already. I can't take another D in this office. What I need is a C or an S in this office. Probably an S, the office, the counterbalance the D, right? But you'd be surprised. I don't think, maybe you won't, but if anybody in here done the DISC in their office, right? I mean, it's interesting to find that in a way you do have this separation of because if it's an office full of all eyes, it's just party time all the time. Nothing gets done, so it doesn't survive as an office. If it's all S's, we're all singing Kumbaya and patting each other on the back, nothing gets done. If it's all D's, everybody's wanting somebody else to do the work, nothing. So these pieces tend to delineate into this balance, I think. And, some social scientists call me out on that. I don't care, but that's how I kind of believe. But you don't want to go through the grinder of getting to the proper balance. You want to do it thoughtfully. I like Wunderlich. It's gotten some bad rap over the years. It's kind of a cognitive assessment of how people think and how they think about things. 6 Working Geniuses, that's Whitman's stuff. Lencioni, thank you. Where, and I do subscribe somewhat to that, and I have used that a little bit. 6 Working Geniuses. And if it's sort of like the DISC thing. If everybody's a wanderer, and we got all wanderers in the office, we got a problem.
But it can kind of go hand in hand with DISC.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the two are very overlapping. Although I tried reading the book, it was a terrible book. I like the idea, but that book was awful to read. I like Profile XT. The thing I like about Profile XT is that, and you have to pay for it, but you can say, look, I'm hiring let's say a bank manager or a district bank manager, right? And Profile XT will get the assessment they give them will be for that, what they say are the profiles that a district bank manager should look like. And so you find out where the candidate fits in. I do think the ranges are a little wide sometimes on Profile XT, but You know, the interesting thing I found out one time, I had this candidate for a big job here in town, and I was kind of working as a side hustle for the actual recruiter. And this was for a CEO position. And it came back that this candidate may be too energetic. And so the client pushed back and said, you know, this thing's screwed up. It's saying it's got too much energy. How could that be bad for a job? How could too much energy be bad for a job? Think about it.
Focus.
Yeah,
Sam.
yeah, just like they can't sit still kind of, or they constantly need, they're trying to look for a different job.
And this is a CEO position. You got to kind of want them in the office some part of the time, right? If they're energetic, you know, like me, you know, when I was running the factory, I couldn't sit in the office. I'd go out and help box parts, you know. Now I got fired from the line a couple times doing that, but so and then good, like I said, Google does this set of, you know, and they use it to, you're trying to get a 3D, not a 2D picture of your candidate, right? Good advice. Let's kind of a review here. I always said, it's one thing I kind of miss about phone interviews. I do most of my interviews as Zoom now, and immediately you see someone on the street. But there is something about doing a phone interview without seeing them and making that visual, like you can't help it. You know, Daniel Kahneman wrote a great book, Thinking Slow and Thinking Fast. It talks about, I mean, it's wired in us. I mean, we're that monkey sitting on a rock and there's a rush in the bushes. Is that a saber-tooth tiger or not? I'm getting higher in the trees. That's part of how we got here, right? So, but if you can do it for a little bit, if you can suspend it for a little bit, and I had a client came in, he wanted to do the interview on site. Lady came in immediately. I could tell immediately he wasn't interested. And they run an office, quiet office. This is for accounting position. She came into the interview and just chatty. Well, I already knew her, you know, and she's just talk, and you know, she just kept doing run on to every question. And I picked it up immediately that she was really, really nervous. And he picked it up that she was extremely extroverted. They don't need another extrovert in the office. And he picked it up that she's an eye on the disc and they needed to see. And so after he's done, I said, look, she was very nervous. That's why she was chatting so much. And that's why she was, you know, so sometimes you got to suspend, you know, somebody. Now I'm still enough old school that there's certain jobs when I'm interviewing for, if they come in with cutoffs and, you know, it's a C-level position, it's probably done. Or they have something special on their t-shirt. Nothing at all. Have prepared questions, have a scorecard. Getting interviews, let's talk about that for a second. I'm sometimes, you know, that's a group interview where several people in the room, right? And I've gotten pushback on that before, but I do think they are good at times because sometimes when I'm asking the question and somebody else is writing, because you'll find it a struggle to try to record some of this stuff if it's just one-on-one. It can be intimidating, and I don't suggest it often, but I got this question the other day. Should we use a group to do this interview? And they were afraid that it would make the candidates nervous. I said, this is for a C-level job. If this makes them nervous, I don't want them, right? Ask behavior-based questions as well as technical questions. This is a sneak question I do every now and then. I said probably every interview. It's kind of a trick question. And again, I'm not really trying to catch people flat-footed, but I am trying to get their shield down for them to be a little bit real with me. And when you say, look, I've already hired you, and now I'm going to call your ex-boss for advice on coaching you, what would he say? What would she say? And it is amazing what people will tell me sometimes. They're like, yeah, you really probably need to stay on top of him because every now and then he tends to wander. And I'm like, But it is interesting what people will tell you about what they think about, and sometimes they're brutally honest without realizing they're being brutally honest. Let's talk about this real quick for my lawyers in the room. I was like, thank God I put this in here. I just put this in here last night. I better say that. You know what you can't ask in an interview, right? There are some things by law, because of ADA and, what's all there's several of them, right? You can't ask personal characteristics.
Fine, you can go ahead and ask him. Okay.
You can't ask personal characteristics, when, like your language or anything personal. And can't ask their age, in Illinois. And I don't know if this is nationwide, but I know it's true in Illinois. You can't ask about family and pregnancy because we had the Pregnancy Fairness Act in a few years ago. Disability and medical conditions, which it does still amaze me how much candidates will go in and tell you stuff that they tell you, but don't follow up with a question. They tell you, and they will tell you a lot. Particularly when sometimes when you're looking at job gaps, and they'll go into that, certainly can't ask about citizenship and military service, and financial or criminal history until you make them a job offer. Once you make them a job offer, you can add, that's the band of box on the resumes, right? All your resumes have the band of box. There's no criminal thing on it, right? So everybody should be compliant with that.
You can ask them if they can drive, like if they have.
If that's part of the requirement of the job. The financial one too, you can do a financial background check if the job is like teller at a bank, right? Some kind of financial thing. But if it doesn't, you can't do that.
My job's typically during like turnover on campus. So we have a lot of students that work for us. I have a lot of high school kids that apply, and there's only a certain amount of 15-year-olds I can have and like actually be able to schedule them. How can I ask that question in a way that's not necessarily are you 15, but no.
Well, you can't, there's
Some,
a minimum minor age thing. You can say if you're not 18, you can't work here.
Well, legally, I think so. Like legally, they
They don't have to, they don't have to tell you the age. You just say you're not 18, you can't work here.
Okay, so right now I'm hiring 16, 17. So whenever I hit that 15, that's when it gets hard, but I don't know how to filter them out in the process because.
Just have a sign on your desk. No.
And that's where I'm like, I'm walking the line. So
I'm not a lawyer.
Do you have in a job description that is a requirement?
It says, can you legally work? And it says yes. And so when they come and I've hired two 15-year-olds, they always show up with their work permits, so they can work. It's just making it difficult at a certain point for me to give them hours because there are so many restrictions behind what they're able.
That's true.
Oh, yeah, so they're limited on what they.
And so I just don't want to get in a situation where I, really like a candidate, say even for a summer position, and then find out that they're 15. And then what do I do if I've already offered them the job? Is it discrimination at that point if I can no longer put them on the schedule for what I was?
You can't do it legally. It's not discriminating.
And then it's hard for her to.
Yeah, so that's kind of why things that led me here.
I think your job description needs to be better tailored to what hours you're looking for and the needs you are looking for.
That's good advice.
Make it a 10.
And on your application, you can still allow them to give their personal information.
So you can allow them, but you can't ask the birth date.
I don't have a choice because there's two up there that legally require that they have to fill out.
Well, but you're doing.
It's, over.
There are other that's a good point, but there are other regulations that override these. They're in trucking. So they're dealing with other stuff that some of you folks aren't dealing with. So they have to comply to these other regulations, right? I'm glad I put this in here and out of jail.
Well, hold on, just to be weird, you won't be surprised. You offer any benefits? Forget it.
Once it's a benefit.
You have something to the effect, you have to be this old to ride this ride.
You're 50.
Cause you're the bulls, right? Oh, my goodness.
In one ear. Where's he going?
You said insulating.
Talk to Brian. You're losing right now.
No.
You're gonna do after class study.
Be the first time, won't be the last.
What I'm saying about assessments, just remember, all humans are jagged. You know, that's what I like about the scorecard is like, there is no perfect candidate, right? We all know this. Pink squirrel, the perfect candidate's a pink squirrel. There's just none. So when you got two candidates, they're always going to be jagged. You know, one's going to be higher in this experience and others going to be higher in that, so on and so forth. So just bear that in mind. So here's what I work. So you're going to deal the deal. You're going to make it. So you've got this candidate you're really interested in. You got to know whether you can recruit them now. And you hire them. And this is what I use. I call it the clamps. And so what I want to know when I'm interviewing a candidate, again, we go back to motivation. Why are they sitting across from me, right? So what I want to know is what right now in their life is the most important out of this list. So why do I want to know that?
So you know how to hook them.
And how do I hook them once I know? Or if I can hook them, right? So look, if my job is in New York and I'm recruiting this, I'll make the call, I get the guy that I want, and he lives here in Bloomington, Illinois, and I say, you know, what's important? And well, you know, right now I got two sons in high school and they're playing football and probably on the losing end of that because he's got location at the top and I'm in New York. Or if, you know, I'm recruiting a 35-year-old and she's got a mortgage, a car payment, kids in school. Money's probably going to be pretty high at the top and I'm probably not as competitive in my salary range as some competitors. So that's probably going to be a tough recruit. In the nonprofit world, I find it is challenge and it is people. And I say challenge, it's a mission-driven thing. And so they call me out if I'm wrong, but people are very mission-driven. They're looking for this challenge of feeding people, housing people, taking care of special needs people, et cetera. So that, you know, if I don't offer that challenge, probably not going to be able to recruit them. So this is the thing that really wraps it up at the end. You know, you got to, what is important to that candidate? You know, the with them. What's in it for them? And if I get a sense of where they're at on this list, you know, like security, like, look, Sam, I got 4 kids, I got this mortgage, and you start to think, well, it is a money thing, but I make a lot of money, but your company's a startup. I can pay him a lot of money. No, your company's a startup. What's the problem there with him? With this list? Security, yeah, it's a startup. Right? So this is a pretty big deal with me when this is always in the back of my mind, motivation, motivation, motivation. Why are they here? What do they really want? And how do they rank in this clamps? So I get the clamps on them once I figure it out, right? Sometimes you just can't meet their needs. This is kind of review. I wanted to talk about this for a second. This is a thing and we do it. Social media is out there, right? If I'm hiring a fork truck driver, this is not what I want to see. If, you know, I'm hiring a pharmacist assistant, I don't want to see this in their social media posts. If I'm hiring, you know, if I see this and somebody's stalking somebody on, and you can tell it on it's probably not a good fit for my office. All 3 of these, we've seen in our office. All 3 of them, we went out, it's like, they put this on social media. right? And, it's like that time Terry was in that Nazi uniform that time, and I was like, oh, God, I'm never gonna get another job. So so long as it's out there for everybody. Oh, by the way, I don't, and I do, HR, harassment training too. If, the other thing I look for, are they bad mouthing the company they work for now? You know how many people do that? So the other thing I would say too, and when they're bad mouthing, that kind of gives me a bad feel for things about what's going to happen next. But also, what if I'm the employer and they're bad mouthing me in the social media? Is there anything I can do about that? Yeah, it's just as if they said it on in this office. So, 4 ways to seal the deal. Ask them to rank clamps. Sell the position with the ranking that they gave you for the clamps, if you can. Sometimes we can't. But then you'll know, look, location's your thing. I don't have the location. It's over. The other thing I like to do is when I'm getting ready to make a job offer, I say, look, they tell me what they're wanting, right? They tell me their needs. And I say, if I do this, will you commit to taking this job? There's something about that psychologically that locks them in. I can't prove that it's true. I just know that it's true. That if you can get them to say that, there's something about us humans, once we do that, bring it. In an offer letter, please tell me you all do offer letters on any of these. And I get it on hourly direct hire jobs, different. I'm big on offer letters. Offer letters have saved my ass 100 times in my life. 100 times. Everybody suddenly got a new memory 6 months later about what was like, no, this is the paper you signed. This is the thing we said. So if you want zero heartburn, call a professional. This is my sales pitch. Finally, in closing, just some of the books I referenced today while I was speaking. What questions did anybody have? We're out of time here. Questions? Yes.
What specifically do you have on the different offer letters? Like you were saying, we have different layers, we got.
I just like to detail, the days off, the day you start.
Offer letter.
Start date, I like to, you're starting on April 5th. If you're doing like. Just sign the thing, say you're starting April, I just put all kinds of details. Bonus plan, salary.
Who you report to. Basic.
Just anything you can think of. I like, if you think it's a minor detail. Put it in.
Most often on reference calls and stuff like that. There'll be people that you're gonna be limited on what you ask folks. Most folks are kind,
I should have this in an expanded slide, but Harry brings up a good point. The thing that I will hear, lawyers will tell you, just tell them that they worked here and this is the date. And this is, that's all. And I talk to people all the time, say, do reference calls. They said, people aren't legally can tell you anything. Well, they can tell you anything. They legally have really nothing from stopping you to tell you almost anything about this former candidate, right? Or client, employee. And believe me, you will hear an earful sometimes on some of these reference calls. So what I say about reference calls is like, there's nothing until there's something. And so you call, yeah, he's a good worker. I'd hire him back. Do you have any coaching advice? That's another good question to ask a reference call. Do you have any coach? Hey, I'm thinking about hiring this person. What would be your first coaching advice? Yeah, make sure you're at the door every day at 7, that they're showing up for work. Hey, reference calls, and you folks have done them, know how they are. They are always telling you something in between lines, right? You're always got to kind of read in between the lines. Unless they're going, no, this guy, I'd hire him back tomorrow.
Well, the predicator is, if you ask them, when you hire this person, they say no.
Yeah, and that, I've had people say, nope. And then they just leave it at that, and that's all you need to know. But to be honest, I have also had that, and then I called two other references. You go, well, why did he give me this person as a reference? You know, but it still raises questions, right?
Can you then call and ask? About
Yeah,
that?
I've done that before. Hey, I called this guy. He's, you know, now you do got to be a little bit careful because this is where the law problem thing happens is that if I don't get that job, I come sue you because you said something that was a lie. That's what I'm gonna.
Is that only for work references versus personal references? We always use personal references as some of them will go on and you're like, okay, they wouldn't, their son or daughter being taken care of by you. So I guess.
But I think you're in a little different. I think you're recruiting in a little different way. I think but I don't care about your personal references and I don't want your personal. Right. If you have trouble coming up with someone that supervised you in the past, I've said that to candidates before. If you can't come up with somebody, I can't move forward on that.
Oh, dead.
Other question?
I didn't really realize that you were at risk for being sued for giving like a bad reference. Is there a way to go about saying you want to, but you don't ask that?
I would say that question again.
Sorry, is there a way you could go about saying like you would not hire that person back if they don't ask that question specifically without necessarily bad?
I've heard it like 1,000 different ways and I don't know if I could give you one answer, but you just kind of start to know, like the more I ask, I'm like, yeah, if you want, yeah, they're great. If you want to, or yeah, they're great, but the ifs and the buts.
Some companies too, they just have a canned response.
State Farm, Country.
Either our policy is not to rehire or even hire upon review, meaning like you're reviewing them, you have to decide to be,
You say the sun's not shining today.
May not come up tomorrow.
that many people asking if you would rehire them.
Not necessarily. I have a lot of students that are doing or trying to exit college into the work.
I think you got it tricky.
Yeah.
I think it's tricky in a different way, but I think that hiring those people are tricky. It's just like they don't even know.
No.
They don't even know, and they're finding out. They're coming to you now. I find out this is not my thing. Showing up for work is not my thing. My favorite, I was interviewing this lady one time, and so the strengths and tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. I said, hell, what's your strengths? And she said, well, I've been told that, I said, what's your greatest weakness? And she said, I've been told that honesty is my weakness. I said, well, I don't think honesty is a weakness. And she goes, I don't give a damn what you think.
She wants to get a D.
Everybody, I appreciate it.